In this video, I will be explaining the JAWMON reports that are in the JAWMON War. For an intro on how JAWMON works, please watch a JAWMON 101 video. As a quick review, JAWMON has start, stop, and add methods. Start and add both take a label that represents the entity that you are measuring. The start and stop methods time any code in between them. In this case, the all pages label is used every time there is a page hit in a web application. And add is used to track non-time-based aspects of your system. In this case, the number of megabytes read. Now let's see how this information looks in a JAWMON report. We're looking at the main screen of JAWMON that you get when you install the JAWMON War. It offers various views of the JAWMON data. For example, here you can look at the JAWMON summary page, you can look at the SQL queries, and all exceptions thrown by your application. Right now we're going to focus on the JAWMON admin page. I've installed the JAWMON servlet filter. You can also install the JAWMON valve for Tomcat, which lets you look at your page hits for your application and other metrics associated with a web application. I'm going to set a filter to just look at the all pages portion of the report. In this case, we can see we've had 9 hits averaging 80 milliseconds. The last page hit was 18 milliseconds. The fastest was 0 milliseconds, the slowest 591 milliseconds, and active represents how many pages we're actually executing when we ran this report. Max active represents the most active pages we had at any given time. And there are a number of other metrics too. You'll see when I refresh this page, the number of hits actually goes up. And that's because this particular page is being measured. Now let's see how we can look at the details of each page invocation. First, I have to enable that capability. Click on this icon. Any registered JAWMON listeners will show up in this list. These are available via JAWMON, but you can also add your own. We're going to enable the FIFO buffer, and what that represents is every time there's a page hit, not only will we aggregate, but we'll get information about that page hit in this buffer. So if we click on display, we'll see that this page was invoked and it took 8 milliseconds. So it's not an aggregate, it's that invocation. And you can see every time we update, there's a new one added. Let's go back to the JAWMON admin page now. And if we click on Has Listeners, you'll see one now is enabled. We'll go back into the listener. And you can not, this time we're looking at a buffer for every time there's a new monitor of that type, but we can also set other types of buffers, listeners, such as only when a max occurs, or only when a min occurs, or only when a max active occurs. This capability is available for any type of monitor you would create, not just pages. You can also view stack traces via this listener. Let me show you. This log4j page will generate an exception. Now if we go back to the listener, we can view this and we'll see the stack trace. Notice we see the JSP that caused the exception as well as the stack trace and other information. That's pretty useful. Listeners allow you to look at not only aggregates but also the most interesting of your details. For example, the slowest pages. Now let me show you a few of the other labels that are tracked within the JAWMON servlet filter or Tomcat valve. I'll type the word valve to filter out and just show related monitors. So you can see it tracks the numbers of exceptions, the number of page hits. Then for each context, or in this case page name, it will actually have how many times it was invoked and how long it took, etc. But you can also tell the number of bytes returned total. You can see 31 invocations returned on average 8,873 bytes, and how many different status codes were returned by the application. In this case, 30 status 200s and 1 status 500. It's also configurable to return even more information than this. Now I'm going to show you the type of data that's collected if you use the JAWMON proxy driver. From the main screen, I've built in the ability to generate data just so you can get a representative example of the type of data that will show up in the JAWMON reports. So I'm going to generate the data now. And that uses an internal database to run some queries. And you can see some result sets returned. I have some exceptions that are thrown just so we can look at some of this data. Now let's go back to the home screen. And we're going to look at the SQL details page. Here you can see the actual query right there. And it also has how long the query took, in this case 1 millisecond, if the statement's being reused, and if there's a stack trace that will show up too. In addition, it will show which method within JDBC made the call. This is a rolling buffer, so as you get new values, the old ones will disappear. Now let's go back to the home page. And we can also just look at the exceptions. This will just keep a list of the most recent exceptions. And if we go to the Jomon admin page, we can also see a lot of different SQL statistics now. Some of these are related to the actual JDBC methods. Here, a statement execute query was called one time. You have stack trace exception information. And you have every single individual query. You can see here it just takes the actual parameter and replaces it with a question mark, and you can see that query was executed 11 times and on average took 1 millisecond. But there's a lot of other ways you can configure this and extra information available, but that should give you an idea. Thank you and happy monitoring.